Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fathom Watches YouTube channel, and today we are interviewing Jonathan, aka JJ Hughes 1969, or as he's better known, CWC _Addict, for our fifth of our collector series. We hope you enjoy. Welcome Jonathan, thank you so much for accepting our invite to come and have a conversation with you about your vast and wonderful collection of military paraphernalia and other interesting things. I want to start with how I always start, is just how you got into this wonderful world, and we'll come on to, you know, what you're known worldwide for, which is CWC Addict, which is true in its full sense. But yeah, if you can kick off with how you started your collection and what sparked your interest in watching in the first place.
Yeah, well, look, thanks very much for having me. I really enjoyed your other Collectors Conversations videos, so I hope I can do this one justice.
I'm sure you will.
Look, whenever anyone asks me about how I got started in watches, I always feel like I should have a story about my father's watch, my grandfather's watch. But no one else in my family is remotely interested in watches. But if I think back, I was a teenager in the 80s, and I remember, walking down the high street in my hometown, and the local jeweler had the original Tag Formula One. And I mean, I must have stood in front of that jeweler's windows for hours.
Yeah,
I really wanted one of those Tag Formula Ones. I finally persuaded my mum to come in with me, and we'll try it on, and I loved it on the wrist. And I remember her asking the jeweler, so what's the guarantee on these? And the jeweler said 2 years. I said, well, we're not buying that then.
No way.
And so we walked out, and I said, well, it's a 2 years guarantee. It can't be good enough quality. So I don't know. That's such a strong memory.
I think Rolex at the time was only 12 months.
Well, so in a way, it's immaterial what the actual guarantee was, because actually, 2 years probably actually quite a pretty good guarantee. But her takeaway from that was, a watch has got to be a really great quality. It's got to be really reliable. You've got to, it's something that should last you for a lifetime. And I think that's, I've always loved tool watches. I've always, I feel a bit of a fraud. Most of my watches are dive watches probably. Yeah. But, I don't dive. But I love tool watches. I love watches that are purposeful. I love watches that are robust, that, you really feel like you can rely on for a lifetime. Yeah. And so I feel like that's my formative experience in watches and watchmaking.
And do you reckon that came from the fact that scene where your mum was like, 2 years, that's mental.
Yeah, it's not good enough.
That's not good enough. So you've always kind of like, in the back of your mind, subconsciously, you've had that like, it needs to be good quality and reliable for me to even consider buying it. Even though most of your stuff's vintage, that kind of, some of that aspect is thrown out the window. But
well, having said that, the oldest watch I think on the table here is an issued Rolex from 1953 that keeps as good time as anything else in my collection.
Amazing.
So you've got, that's older than I am. That takes a bit of doing nowadays. Watches they should last you. They should last you, and they should have purpose, and they should be robust.
I think this is actually the first time I've seen one of these.
That's a pretty rare watch.
This is a really...
We can talk about that a little bit later.
Wow, amazing.
But I've collected watches now. I was saying to you earlier, my very first job in the early 90s, I went out, month 2, I went out and I spent my entire second month's pay packet on a vintage Rolex Air King. Sometimes people say to me, how do you feel about spending a lot of money on watches? It goes back to when I first started working. I blew my second month's pay packet, it all went on a watch.
Amazing.
And so, I've been kind of spending money on watches now for, kind of a good 30 years. Yeah. And I'd probably say as a serious collector for maybe the last 20 years.
Okay. So that's a long time, but you can see in your collection that you can't have collected what you've collected without having spent that level of time, because it's part of it is so vast and intricate that you just wouldn't be able to find these things in any lesser time, really, would you?
Oh, for sure. The CWCs, I've spent 10 years collecting CWCs.
Solidly.
And there's still stuff I'm looking for. I've been looking for 10 years.
That's crazy.
I haven't found it. There are watches there that it took me years of pursuing them, but it all started with these. So this is a 1990s quartz issued diver, and I guess sort of 10, 12 years ago, I was collecting sort of various military watches. I always loved military watches. I think it comes back to those ideas of want to be robust, or it feel like it'll last a lifetime,
and it's got a bit of soul and history to it.
And actually, I think these kind of really clear, purposeful designs are really beautiful.
They are.
And when I buy dress watches, actually I like the same thing. I like really clear, simple designs. So I think there's real beauty in military watches. But this is these watches is where CWC started for me. They're a real classic.
So was it just something that you just stumbled on a CWC? Like, when was the first time you knew about CWC as a brand?
I was at a Watches of Knightsbridge auction.
Okay.
And I think they had 2 or 3 CWC divers.
And when was this? So what? 2015?
2013, 14, something like that.
Okay.
And
so when they were still they were known watches, especially to military collectors, but they weren't known in terms of there wasn't any wasn't any curricula out there on what these watches were, how many numbers were issued.
Yep.
A lot of it was hearsay.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I remember, I remember when I moved to London in 2010. They were a few hundred quid. I mean, 5514s and 5517 MilSubs were, in 2010 were not even 10 grand.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
think
the happy days of collecting.
The happy days, yeah. So you were at an auction, and
and I saw some. I think they had Watches of Knightsbridge had 3 or 4 CWC divers, and I thought, well, those are really beautiful. I got a bid on one of them, and they and this was they were just obviously they were doing the in-person auctions there, and I turned up, and I bought a lot from them over the years, and then all 3 of them went for way above the estimates, and I kind of thought there's something happening here, something going on here, and this is why I started researching them, started trying to find out more about them, started buying the divers, and actually that's where the whole CWC Addict came from. Because it's the good old days of the Military Watch Forum, and individual posts, and there was quite a lot of information on there, but you really had to search through a whole bunch of old posts, and you had to search through threads. At one point I actually bought DVDs of the original threads from or CDs of the original threads from the 90s in order to go back through all the history. And so loads of people had done a lot of work on them. There's an Australian collector who'd collected built up a really interesting database of a lot of the issued dive numbers. There's a Brit, Tim, who'd done a huge amount of work on the G10s. So there were lots of these pockets of information.
But nowhere sort of in one place.
And big gaps.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me started. I thought, well, it would be really nice to sort of pull this together.
Yeah.
So I started sort of pulling it together, privately and working with other collectors. And, it still exists in part of the market. You get a small number of collectors and dealers who sort of have the lists, but they aren't public.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit. And I was sitting at home, I had more time, and I'd started writing some articles that had been published elsewhere. And I just thought, why not put this all online? Why not kind of make it available?
So actually CWC Addict only went live to the public in 2020?
That's right.
Is that right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, yeah. So the work obviously has been going on for years.
Yeah.
But it's really only over the last 5 years that I've been making it all public.
And how long before it went live do you think you were sort of accruing all that information and acquiring it?
I mean, there was probably a good 5 years worth of work.
Background work.
Yeah. So, and some of it is, I guess I started with the divers. And I started trying to kind of figure out, so what are all the years and what are all the numbers and what are all the variations? And that's when I started sort of hunting down the divers. So this, this is a pretty common one. This is from the mid-90s. I think it's beautiful. I wear these a lot. But you can pick these up pretty easily.
Yep.
If you go back to, obviously it started, and Jason Heaton did an amazing article for Hodinkee and made these famous. But this is the watch that replaced the MilSub. So this is the 1980 dive watch. Made by Dadain in France, and this is an original. This is not the reissue, and they are
absolutely mint.
They are. I mean, that's a beautiful example.
Wow.
And I was really lucky to get that.
Beautiful.
Quite a long time ago.
God.
A long time. Yeah, I don't know. Probably owned that 8-9 years, and it was.
That is like almost new.
That was a double-digit 1,000 watch 8-9 years ago, and I actually haven't seen one on the market for a good 6 or 7 years.
I love how imperfect the handwritten 369 are. I love that. That is a beautiful watch.
So you kind of then started trying to figure out, okay, what are the individual years? How do you tell them apart? That's a 1980.
Because even the 81, the dial is quite different, isn't it?
So this is an 81. And in 81, you can see the logo changes, the circle T.
Yeah, so the logo is much larger now, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some variation even within the 81s, because some of them have the 369 loomed and some of them don't.
Yeah. The bezel, is there a variance in the bezel of the coloration between the 80 and 81? Don't they stay a bit more like green?
Yeah, so the 80s are a little bit yellowish. The 81 through to the 83 are a little bit green, and then the 85, 86 are quite mustard.
Yeah.
So yes, the shapes of the 5s are different. In the 50s. So you see, I went through, so not on these two, but if you look at the 85, 86, the shape of that's an 84. We'll talk about that in a second. That's an oddball.
Here we go.
You can see that even the bezel type face is slightly different. So, learning about all these differences, learning to see when bezels had been swapped, when mid cases had been swapped.
And it's interesting because you see the same variants on a lot of non-encased French dive watches from the same period, from the 80s and 90s, because there's tons of random micro French brands that no longer exist.
Yes.
And you see these bezels all the time.
Yeah.
But again,
So and the collectors who've got a lot of these and have handled a lot of them, it's a little bit like Rolex. You have to handle them and you
100%.
have to really see the differences. So you've already got a big difference between the 80 and the 81. The loom's different, the dial layout is different.
Second hand.
The 83 was then another evolution. I don't have an 83 with me. But the 83, of course, was
the first quartz.
That was the first quartz. Yeah. So these two are automatic.
Yeah.
But what you do have is then, I guess, what we kind of call an 82. So the 82, there's maybe 3 or 4 known examples of these. This is an automatic dive watch. It's got the NATO stock number on the back. It's clearly configured. It is a military watch, but it's most probably a prototype for the contract that was run by
Persista had it.
Exactly,
didn't they? Because we had that one with the serpentine hands.
Yeah, I mean that's a fantastic watch, and that was obviously the last automatic dive watch that the British military ordered.
Because obviously we had the test watch that is now no longer with us, and it looked like they'd sent it to the Falklands.
Yeah,
and they were testing that watch.
Yeah. So that was an 81. So this is where it all gets fun. So that was an 81 configuration
with a different case back.
But this is, there's maybe 3 or 4 of these, and what we reckon is these were produced by CWC to be a prototype to try and win the contract. They didn't win the contract.
I get you.
So the 82, the last mechanical small contract went to Persista.
Yeah.
And so there's a few of these knocking around.
So
I actually own 2 of I think the 3 known.
The actual 82 test watch that we had that was used by CWC to then produce the quartz is actually different to that.
Yes, so it's an 81 configuration.
Interesting. Okay, fine.
And
is that a sterile back?
No, there's the NATO stock number on this is in.
Interesting.
So there's no issue number.
No.
There's a NATO stock number, and you very often see them marked up like this on prototypes.
Yeah,
so prototypes and test watches. They don't. You saw that on the test watch. They have slightly different types of markings.
Yeah. Amazing.
So this is a fascinating watch and an interesting bridge between those very early mechanical watches and then the quartz watches. And then you get into 83, which is quartz, and then you get into the 85, 86, which, if I had to pick my favourite dive watch from CWC.
That was something I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Because you have nearly 300 CWCs in total.
I do,
So to choose one is no mean feat.
So it would be the 85 or the 86 dive watch, because they're really nice and thin. They're actually possibly the thinnest dive watch from CWC.
And why is that?
It's just the movement and the case. They each contract until it all sort of settled down in the 90s. The contracts went to different manufacturers.
Yeah, right, actually. So who makes the case on that? Do you know?
Nobody knows. They're all marked MRP. They're all modern cases, but they're all just, as you said, there's so many variations.
So what? So that's an 86.
So this is an 86.
And this is an early 90s.
That's a 90. Which one's that? That's a mid 90s one. Yeah.
So this has got a different ETA movement to that.
Yeah. But they also the bezels on the 85, 86 go this lovely mustard colour.
Almost a bit like the original.
You've got a little bit of variety. You've got the dials are always slightly green. The hands are always slightly yellow. They're really nice thin ones. They're really attractive watches.
And it's a question we actually get asked a lot here about hands and dials, because people are obsessed with the idea that they have to match. That just isn't the case. So because the dial manufacturers and the hand manufacturers are two separate entities. And very often, certainly in the 80s and 90s, you see a lot more where the hands just don't match. I mean, we have a new old stock 2001 and the hands don't match the dial.
Yeah. And it depends. So in some years, so 85, 86, if I see a watch
actually on this one, the hands are actually quite creamy. And the dial is stark green.
If I see one of these where the hands and the dial match, it's wrong.
You know it's wrong, yeah.
But it means someone's reloomed it.
Yeah.
Or they've done something funny with it.
For aesthetical reasons,
Because I know that, 20 or sort of 30 years on, 30, 40 years on, they will have developed to look like that. So it's about the watch, it's about understanding the watches. But these are automatic, this is quartz, and this is the weird one. So this is a fake CWC.
This is what you call the Hong Kong special, right?
So this is the 1984 Hong Kong special. And they're not a CWC. And I did, just before Ray Mellor passed away, we organised an interview with him. It was amazing to get him on tape talking about his watches. And of course, a few more years, I would have loved to have asked him some other things. I would have loved to ask him what SP means. We'll talk about those.
I bet now, knowing what you know, I bet you'd have a list of questions you could ask him now.
But we were able to ask him about these. And look, a lot of people had always suspected they weren't CWCs, just because the case, it's a completely different case.
Yeah.
The build quality is not CWC build quality. They're well known for leaking. The dial is not in great condition, and these were actually made by Dodane.
Okay.
So Dodane made the 1980.
Yeah.
We know that, and they're all marked as Dodane.
Yeah.
After 1980, he went to 2 other Swiss suppliers, but for some reason, in 1984, Dodane made another batch that were marked CWC, were sold to a military unit that we don't know where. We think maybe Hong Kong,
and CWC had nothing to do with this. Ray had no...
And Ray basically said, well, if it says CWC on the dial, but we didn't put that mark there, if it's made by a case maker who knows us, but we didn't commission them, then it's a fake.
Wow.
So do you
reckon Dodane just had some, because the dial looks awfully similar to the 81?
Exactly.
They just had leftover dials?
Well, no. So it's a new dial because it's got the new logo, or it's got a version of the new logo. It's not quite correct. It's got the tiny circled T, which is what you get on the 1980.
So it's a bit of a hybrid of the 80 and 81.
There's a known civilian watch that uses this case and this bezel. This is not a bezel used on any other CWCs.
Okay.
So, somebody gave them an order for 100 CWCs, and so they made them with a,
They just bypassed CWC entirely.
Yeah.
Do you know how many were ordered?
100.
100.
So we know it's a batch of 100 from the serial numbers that we've seen.
Because you said that they weren't particularly well made, is that why so few exist? Do you think?
Yeah, and the ones
Because 100's a decent amount, isn't it?
Yeah, although it's not that unusual for a batch of 100 to only, particularly after, say, 40 years, to only see 20 or 30 watches. We maybe know of 15, 16 of these. 1986 was a batch of, I think, 100 or 150. And it's astonishingly rare.
They're like rocking horse
shit. That's the only one I've ever seen, and I bought it.
That's the only one I've ever seen, because you bought it in.
So,
crazy.
But there's also the other variation of these is there's a Hong Kong dealer bought a bunch of these and redialed them.
So are those the ones that have got the really dark
So they've
blue?
got, and they've got an open 369. So basically the Hong Kong dealer, excuse me, he did a redial that was based on the Seamaster dial, Seamaster 300 dial.
Yeah, okay.
And just rebadged it as 300 as a CWC. So this is the original dial, and you can see it's not in great quality. It's quite poor.
Yeah.
There are some really beautiful dials. I really like the dealer redialers, by the way. We
have one, but they're almost like my 2998. They're like a radium color.
Yes.
Tritium, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like really dark patina.
I think they're beautiful dials.
And a lot more bold.
And they've got a really nice, they've got the open 6 and 9. So they're fun dials, but they're it's kind of a fake dial on a fake watch.
I love that. But they've clearly gone through some official line of inquiry to get the watches, but just not via.
They've been bought by a British military unit somewhere.
Yeah. The French do what the French are good at. They just bypassed the actual brand and just made the money themselves.
But again, fascinating part of CWC history, which is why I own one.
That's really cool.
And then, of course, you get to the mid-80s, then you have a bit of a break, and then you get into the early 90s. So then they start again in 92. And this is where the bezel changes from an acrylic bezel insert to a aluminium bezel insert. And I love the 92s. They have it in both the...
This is the 92 is the only one that's got this particular bezel, though, isn't it?
That's exactly right. This sort of thick hash mark bezel.
It's actually it's a really handsome watch, isn't it?
It is a really attractive bezel.
I think it's my favourite. I think it's my favourite of the bezels, but I think the other one, didn't the SBS have an acrylic one?
So the SBS 92, so this is an SBS 92, and this is my this one's quite well known because it's, I found it really water damaged.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I got CWC to actually replace the movement actually wasn't in bad nick.
Okay.
It had a couple of bits that were that were rusted up, and so when there's the battery's dead, but when there's a working battery, it actually works really nicely. But it's got this really cool water damage dial. So this is a 92 SBS, and of course you can see it's the same.
Oh, it's the same bezel.
insert.
Yeah.
And that was the only year when they had that thick hash mark bezel.
It's lovely.
And they did both the SBS and the 92. The first SBS was the 88, and again these are incredibly rare and hard to find watches.
Like we were just discussing before, you've still not found one you're still hunting for one.
So this is
with a complete case back.
So this one, exactly. So this one is, it's 92 case, bezel insert, movement, and hands. The movement, by the way, in these is also incredibly rare.
Is it?
So that's one of the reasons I know this actually was a 92 is because the movement in here has not been in any other CWC watches. It's a slightly later dial. It's an early 90s dial, so I suspect at some point someone replaced. Although it is the original 80s hands, so at some point it was probably in a military service. The dial was replaced, and it's a non-CWC blank caseback.
Right.
But these, it's so hard to find these. You get the opportunity to buy one in any condition.
Yeah.
You get it. And I've got some other watches.
Well, you said how many do you know of that exist in their true form?
4 or 5.
Yeah,
and one of those is completely knackered as well.
Yeah, okay.
And actually, a couple of those, the black on the case is basically either been rubbed off or is completely worn.
Oh, I think I've seen that. It actually almost looks like an RM.
Yeah, so two of those don't even have black cases. So you know,
do you reckon someone's like civilianized it, and to make it look less military, they've just rubbed it off?
Quite possibly. Yeah. I mean, it does look like it's been rubbed off. So you know, there's so few of these. CWC actually owns the one absolutely perfect one of these.
Okay.
And so I'm so glad that that's in CWC's ownership. Because this is the iconic.
I need to go to T-Man and actually ask to have a look at it.
It's it's absolutely beautiful watch.
I've not seen it yet. It's not on the display either, is it?
But this is another example of actually what I find really interesting about collecting military watches is they all tell their own story.
Yeah, 100%.
And they don't have to be completely correct. You know, some of it is. So there's service dials which are really interesting.
It's by necessity though, isn't it?
Yeah.
For example, this one, if this would have, you know, that was probably a common occurrence. If you know, like I read in the Falcon's book for the test watch, even with the test watch, there was user error. Someone left the crown out, gone for a dive, and there was the watch had filled up with condensation.
Yeah.
So it had to go back to service to get another, you know, dial put in.
For sure. And if that had stayed in service, you know, they would have replaced the dial and hands.
100%.
Because you can't use it. You can't.
No,
you're
can't.
not going to dive with it like
that.
No,
exactly. Yeah.
So that kind of history of watches. So I've got, you know, if we jump to the mechanical field watches, the W10. So this is an interesting one. This is a 1980 one. So towards the end of the mechanical field watches, but you know, you can see in the NATO stock number there, it starts with an O. Okay. And actually, for a while, we didn't. Again, it's a voyage of discovery. We didn't know whether that was a 0 or an O until you know, someone popped up and was selling one and said, "Well, this was my issued watch when I was posted to the military in Oman."
Oh,
so,
wow.
British Army officer went to the military in Oman. He said, "You know, I was issued this watch and some binoculars and something else." And so suddenly we kind of realised, okay, and it makes sense. There's big links between Oman and the British military. There still is. So this was, and they did these in 2 years. But the reason I like this one is if you look at the hands, those are not CWC hands. In fact, they look to me like hands off.
Aren't they meant to be like
Smiths? Yes. So they should look like that.
Yeah.
But they, I think those hands are probably off a Smiths W10 or something like that. And of course, that watch has been in Oman. It's needed servicing. There's been something wrong with the hands.
Whatever they had to hand.
The local military, the local military watchmaker just replaced them with whatever he had. And so, there's no way I'm ever going to change that because that's part of the story of the watch. It's not correct as issued, but that's part of the, the fun and part of why we collect them.
So talk to us about, for the viewers at home that are watching, talk to us about these W10 and then G10. Just give us a little bit of an overview as to why some are W10 and why some are G10.
So anyone who doesn't know the history of CWC, which I hope is a vanishingly small number, but the CWC was founded by a guy called Ray Mellor in the early 70s. Now, Ray had run Hamilton watches in the UK. Hamilton obviously had a whole bunch of military contracts, but Hamilton, in the early 70s, having a lot of problems, they decided to basically shut down in the UK. And so he said to them, well, what are you going to do about the military contracts you've got? And they said, oh, we don't care, we're just shutting down everything. So he thought, okay, kept quiet. And once he left Hamilton, he founded CWC specifically to take over those military contracts.
Yeah.
Because he knew he was running the business, he knew all the people.
He knew the people anyway. Yeah.
He knew the people who were making them.
And did you ever ask him why he called it Cabot Watch Company?
So he was taking his son to Bristol, to university in Bristol.
Okay.
And this is in the early 70s. And as he was driving into Bristol, he drove past the Cabot Monument. Because John Cabot...
it's pronounced Cabot. I do apologise. I always say Cabo, but I'm trying to
I think it's Cabot. Cabot, so he was Portuguese. And in fact, he wasn't John Cabot. He was, had a Portuguese name. So it may well be Cabot, but I say...
Okay.
So he's driving past, there's a monument to Cabot because he set off from Bristol to when he was exploring the New World. And so, Ray's driving his son to university, and they drive past this monument, and he says, well, they're talking about the business, and he says, yeah, it's going to be an adventure. We're exploring something new here. Let's name it after John Cabot.
That's cool.
Because he was an adventurer. He was exploring something new. And so it
Oh,
became
that's
the Cabot Watch and Clock Company.
Amazing.
So he took over the Hamilton were making watches exactly like this, the W10.
Yeah.
And when I say exactly like this, I mean exactly like this. They were made in the same factories.
So I've had a couple of the 6BBs, the W10s, and then they did because they moved to Geneva, didn't they? And then they started double signing the dials.
But these are identical
in every way.
In every way except for the dial. They're made in the same factories by the same people.
Wow.
Because what Ray did is he went to the factories that were making them. They just lost the contracts too.
Yeah, no, I suppose
and so they had the capacity. And he said, well, will you make them for CWC? And they said, of course. They've been dealing with Ray for years.
Amazing.
They had the capacity, they had the cases. So this was one of the first big contracts the CWC won, although they didn't start delivering them until 76, because of course they were still using the
so what's the first year you can buy a CWC W10?
76.
76.
So they went from so this one, so I brought a few oddities. I may not have brought the 76, but yeah, basically, they had, a whole bunch of these, and they made them from 76 through to 1980 for the British military.
Okay. Just for the British military?
Not just for the British military. So this one was made for the Omani military. So they did Oman for a couple of years. They did the Brunei military for a couple of years. They did a bunch of different things, and they did some that we don't know about. So this one is marked KK on the back. Now we're pretty sure that's Kenya.
Okay.
And one of your previous guests who's also,
I was going to say, have you asked Matthew about it?
So Matthew has actually got one that he bought from a guy in Kenya.
Did he?
Who says it was his grandfather's watch. His grandfather actually worked on the railways in Kenya.
Amazing.
So we're pretty sure.
Pretty sure it's
but there's no direct provenance, and there are no other Kenyan military watches that are marked KK like that.
Okay.
Some that are marked KA.
Okay, I made another pun there. Sorry.
This is going to turn into the funniest one yet, I tell you. It's going to be rip-roaringly hilarious. So we don't know what that one is. Pretty sure it's Kenya, but don't know for sure.
And that's 77, okay.
This one's a real oddity.
I was going to say, the dial looks completely different to any of the others.
So this one is marked 81. And so this is another, I brought this one in because it's a real object lesson in not being too sure of yourself in military watch collecting.
It also, I don't know if you've noticed, the font looks similar to the 81 print on the, that sort of like stretched out font.
But the NATO stock number is a mess and is unlike any, and badly
52382
and is unlike any other CWC. So the first couple of those I saw, I was convinced they were a fake.
Okay.
And then when I'd seen a few more, and when I realised that there was probably a run of maybe 1,000.
Oh wow!
Looking at the serial numbers. And I saw cases coming up, and I saw complete watches coming up, and I bought a few, and I realised actually this is a completely unknown thing. I have a theory it's Nigeria.
Okay.
Because it looks to me like that was sold without any factory markings on the case back. And Ray talked about, some bloke bought a bunch of watches off him and then remarked them and sold them to the Nigerian military, along with some tents and some other stuff.
Wow.
So it might be that, but I don't know. I love these watches because, again, it
opens up so many questions, doesn't it?
Well, and also, I love it as a warning because particularly when you've spent, like me, I spent 10 plus years now collecting these, cataloguing them.
Yeah.
It's really easy for me to fall into the trap of, I know everything about CWC.
Well, we also said as well, when you also ask military, ex-military personnel, their opinion is like the opinion.
They're always very definitive.
They're always very definitive in what they say.
Yeah.
So sometimes that answer from that person and that person can actually contradict each other.
For sure. And, and a military person will often know a lot about the specific thing that they did and absolutely nothing about everything else. So you've got to be slightly careful.
Yeah.
But, I thought they were a fake and I was wrong. And so, it opens your mind and it says, keep thinking.
Yeah.
Keep being curious.
And when was the last time that you've experienced something like that, where you've actually found out something quite major or a misconception? Well, when was the last time that's happened to you? The sort of largest sort of recent find or change of information?
So this is then the last W10 that I'm bringing along, and actually, I think this is an interesting one, and maybe a good answer to your question. So again, this is definitely CWC, but it's got the new logo, so it's got the post-82 logo on it. It doesn't have a broad arrow, and it's got a straight line NATO stock number and no issue number.
And a year? Has it got a year?
Doesn't have a year.
Oh.
So this, I reckon, this is mid-80s. So I've been hunting, I've seen photos of these, I've been hunting for one for several years and recently acquired one. And I thought this could be the watch that CWC did for the Football Association.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because in 82, and if you read Ray Miller's obituary that his son-in-law wrote in, I think, The Guardian, his son-in-law talks about going to the FA Cup final in 82 with him. And Ray Miller spending as much time worrying about the timekeeping of the watches that he'd supplied to the referees.
No way.
And so I thought, this could be it, because, the time matches, it's a civilian contract watch.
Yeah.
At that point in their history, they didn't do these kind of civilian watches for sale over the counter that they do now. So, everything was an issued, or as a contract watch. This is, I can show you some others which have a similar marking to that, which are, contract, non-military contract watches. But I actually got I'm not really interested in football.
Okay.
But the videos of the 2 FA Cup finals in 1982 are online.
Okay.
Because the first one wasn't, even after penalties, was a draw, so they had.
You're probably the only person that's watched those videos that's only looked at the referee's hand for the entire duration of the match.
Well, I didn't actually watch those videos. I got my son-in-law to watch those videos. But yes, I did exactly that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we could find there were no good pictures.
Oh, that's a shame.
So I think that, I was convinced that when I found this and when I could kind of pull it all together, it would be the FA watch.
Hopefully, if there is someone watching this video that knows anybody that their father was a referee during that period or is still alive, it would be great if they could
get in touch.
Get in touch via the website or via CWC Addict, because it would be amazing to add some extra information to the
for sure
to the puzzle.
Yeah, but you asked me about W10s and G10s. So those are the mechanical field watches that went up to 1980.
So that's all those, and then the case shape looks like it changes quite drastically.
And then in 1980, and this is a really historically important moment for military watches globally. The 1980 contract for these watches, for the G10s, which were then the quartz watches, that's the first major purchase of quartz watches by any military anywhere in the world.
Okay.
So there's a few known sort of potentially smaller, maybe prototype contracts, and even them we're not entirely sure. But every other military quartz contract is post 1980.
Okay.
So it's the first time any military in the world has bought quartz watches
en masse.
And of course, they're far more accurate, they're far more precise, they're cheaper. It's just a much better deal.
We have another one here. But that's.
And so these start in 1980, and this is one from the very first batch in 1980,
wow, okay.
and it's known as the Fat Boy because if you look at that, that's a good chunky watch. And the case types and there are 32 varieties of these to collect between 1980
32
and 2006.
And have you got all 32?
I have all 32. yes. And again, it's one of those things where I built the knowledge over a long period of time and then published them.
You're missing how many from the RNs?
None.
And how many of the SBS? Because technically you have got an 88.
None.
So you've got all those.
Yeah.
And which one did you complete first?
Just
32. That's a lot. That's a lot to find.
I probably completed. I think I completed the G10s first. Then I completed the RNs. Then I completed the SBSs, and I've only very recently actually completed the W10s.
Have you?
And I say complete because I'm not ruling out there's something else out there.
Yeah, complete as to what you're aware that exists.
And in fact, I kind of only completed the SBSs, you could say, quite recently, when I've been looking for a 97 SBS for years and years and years. And I have a list now of 12 CWCs that I'm still hunting.
Okay.
And a 97 SBS was on there. And I started to think, do they even exist? Because even really rare things, people have sent me photos, or I know of other collectors with them.
Yes.
And so I was talking about this with some other collectors, and we had a discussion on MWR. And actually, the 97 SBS, which I've put on the website in the past as being one of the issued years, it doesn't exist.
It's actually just...
We're pretty sure that was an early error in some of the spreadsheets that we were putting together.
And have you asked, because obviously you said they took over, Mal and Richard took over CWC in 97. Do they have any record keeping of...
So, well, we were talking about this. When Ray sold the business, he threw away almost everything up until when he sold the business.
Bizarre.
So, we asked him about it, and he said, I didn't think anyone would be interested. Sold the business. Nobody cares about that, those old contracts. So in a way, so if you look at my website now, the 97 SBS is not on there.
It's not on there, okay.
Because
so you've been after something that doesn't actually exist?
Yeah.
Fine.
I spent 10 years hunting something that doesn't exist.
So what have you got left?
So the things that I have mostly left still to get are in the chronographs. So the 776, the 7733 mechanical chronographs.
Okay, cool.
So this was another labour of love. So collectors talk about the Fab Four. So in the 7733 chronographs, the CWC, the Persista, the Newmark,
Hamilton,
and the Hamilton.
Yeah.
And as I started looking at these and started buying them, I realised there are all these variations in the CWCs. And this took me years and years to get to the point where I could publish anything on this.
Okay.
Because, across those, so they were issued for, from 70, well, the Hamilton started in 1970, and then the last ones were 82 for the last batch of CWCs. And within those years, there were multiple thousands issued across the 4 different brands, because they're all based on pretty much exactly the same case, pretty much exactly the same movement.
Yeah, it was a very strict.
There was stuff interchanged.
Yeah.
So you see CWCs with Hamilton case backs that were just swapped through service.
Yeah.
Then CWC actually had the maintenance contract when the MOD
for all the Fab Four watches.
Well, yes. So when the MOD shut down Hurstman, they needed someone to continue doing watch servicing, and Ray Mellor and the CWC actually took over that contract for a while. So you see a lot of early Hamiltons with CWC dials because they came in to be serviced, and CWC would stick a CWC dial on them. Stuff gets swapped over.
But like I said, the wearer isn't going to care, right?
Nobody cares. They just want it to work.
Yeah.
So there's so much mixing and matching. People will make up watches from parts. People will, and I know collectors done this. They've got something with an old rubbish dial, and they thought, well, I don't like that dial, and put another one in that I've got, and of course it's from a different year. So it took me. I have a list of hundreds of these watches where I've gone through and I've categorized.
Wow.
And I think you asked me how did I do this. I mean, talk to a lot of collectors. Buy a lot of them. I own a lot of these now.
Yeah.
I've gone through every auction listing I can find.
Wow.
There's there are sites that archive years and years of eBay listings, and I've gone through every single one of those. I spent hours and
it's like
hours.
Forensic level of
cataloging every single watch I could find, every single dial variation, every single hand variation. where the...
You would have been a fantastic auditor, do you know that?
Well, my very first career was as a claims manager in insurance companies, so I think...
There we go. And the writing was on the wall.
I finally figured out that there were 6 variations of the luminous issued dial and case and hand. So 6 variations of those. And there, again, I did all that research, published it on the website. But there are also 3 different variations of service dials.
Okay.
There are non-lume versions that were issued in 3 different years. And then there are non-military contracts of various types.
Okay.
So this is a little bit of a variation. So this, I think, is this is where I need to actually check the case backs, because even I can't remember.
So this is the part of your collection where you're still hunting for quite a few examples.
There's a few of these, yeah. So this is a beautiful early, gilt dial. So this is this is printed on a brass, and you can see the way the light plays on that.
So what year is this?
So this is a 73. So this is the very first issued year.
Amazing.
Of that.
So late.
Very first
so late. I mean, for most watch brands, they've gone away from gilt.
Yeah.
Really, just under 10 years before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Rolex wasn't doing gilt at this point.
No, 67 was the first year of matte.
So that's so that's a really early. And I love these early gilt dials. Here's another one. This is an interesting one because this was issued to the Civilian Aviation Authority.
Okay, CAA.
So RAF, and obviously there's really close.
Oh, so there's actually no year. That's just the watch number.
So there's I know of 3 of these, and they're probably a batch based on numbers we've seen of maybe 20 watches.
Okay.
But this is early. This is also early 70s with a beautiful gloss. Beautiful gilt dial. So that's kind of that doesn't count amongst the 6 because that's a civilian. That's a CAA specific contract.
So that's the civilian pile.
Then this is, you can see this
the glass on that is mad.
A beautiful, and again, and with the silver CWC printing, but no T.
No T, yeah.
So no military broad arrow. And you can see there, NATO stock number. Again, on some of these other watches, I think I said, some of the prototypes, the test watches, the civilian contracts, they have a different style.
That looks like the prototype marking from the 82.
So I think this is a civilian contract. I think I know of 3 of these. And when you're looking for rare watches and you're looking for a long time, you're hunting for them around the world. So I found this corresponding with a young lad in Saudi who said it was his friend's grandfather's watch, who was a pilot, commercial pilot, which kind of makes sense. This is an aviation watch.
Yeah.
And so, it makes me think, was this a contract, in the early 80s for, a Middle Eastern airline?
Which, I mean, it's not a jump to go, well, if Ray was supplying
so we know
Oman, Brunei,
exactly.
word gets about, and they go, oh, by the way, I know a guy that can make you some watches.
So, and look, you will have done this, I'm sure, many people watching this will have done this, you go to any length to get that watch. So the firm I work for has an office in Dubai. So I call up a mate of mine in the office in Dubai and say, anyone going to be in Riyadh? He says, yeah, one of my colleagues is on a job in Riyadh. I'll give him a call. I get in touch with the colleague in Riyadh. I say, any chance that the lad who owns this watch could come to your hotel in Riyadh and you could do a deal with him? I said, yeah, of course, happy to do that. So the guy goes to the hotel in Riyadh.
You're getting a colleague's colleague to do a deal on your
Riyadh.
behalf. Is it like one of those old school auction things where you got 2 phones to each side? Yeah.
so I get into they all meet up in this hotel lobby in Riyadh.
Yeah.
I've helped this young lad get on PayPal because he said, well, could you do a bank transfer? I said, well, I don't mind doing a bank transfer, but how do you know you've got you want to walk away from that deal knowing you've got the money.
Yeah.
And I want to see the watch
3 days with a bank
before.
transfer, yeah.
So I said, look, why don't I help you? So he wasn't on PayPal. I helped him board himself onto PayPal because I said, then I can pay you, and you'll see you've got the money, and then everyone's a winner. And so I'm teamsing, this guy. I'm saying hello. He's showing me the watch on video. Everyone, so everyone's happy. We do the deal. They apparently stay and have a nice chat and a beer in the hotel lobby. And then the watch goes from Riyadh to Dubai, and Dubai to London. And
were you waiting at the Heathrow terminal with a sign up?
CWC
on arrivals,
watch.
CWC watch. Yeah.
So we were actually at an event together, and a week or so after that. But yeah, so this stuff you hunt all around the world for it.
I gotta say, you have to admire. Same with Matthew with all the South African stuff. You got to admire the level of passion that you need to have to be able to acquire this amount of stuff, and even things like that. That was probably hours of communication.
Yeah.
Just to acquire, just to buy something.
Yeah. But then the other thing is you can't be a collector. So you can't collect everything until you know what everything is. So the G10s, for instance, these little quartz ones.
I think they're beautiful as well. These Fat Boy ones are lovely.
They're lovely, yeah.
They're absolutely gorgeous, yeah.
That one.
This is an 80, I think, as well.
Okay, so this
is in your stock.
Yeah, so this is an 80, but this is also an 80. But have a look at that case back.
Yeah,
that's
completely different.
That's
again,
probably a prototype.
That's got the same line again.
But so you can't buy all the G10s until you know what all the G10s are. So I spent another guy. Tim had actually done a ton of work on these already, so I knew what all the years were, and I knew serial number ranges.
Including the civilian ones?
So, funnily enough, there are no civilian or non-military contract G10s we know of.
Oh, really? Okay.
Except this one, which, when I bought this from MOD surplus, so I think it's probably an MOD or sort of a prototype or test watch that then got used.
Because that's a similar line to one of the other.
Exactly. Yes.
One of the other watches had just a long line of text. Yeah.
So I kind of knew that there was a certain number of them, but in some years, so in say 2004, particularly in those years in the early noughties, where it became a bit more sporadic, and they weren't doing.
Yeah, because there were a lot of years where the MOD just didn't order any.
And so, they go to CWC some years and they say, we suddenly need 800 watches, 1,000 watches, 3,000 watches, whatever. And the CWC would be pulling some out of, by that point they were doing, they were just doing civvy market ones. So they'd be sort of pulling
them back out of the
so they'd pull them off and they'd mark some up and they'd buy another batch and they'd mark some up. So some years, like 2004, there's multiple different varieties of marking. So it depends on what you mean by collecting all of them.
That actually makes sense now, because even with from memory, the SBSs, they've got different fonts.
Yeah.
When you get to the early noughties.
Yes.
Because they're not ordering them in one batch. They're ordering them in stages.
Yeah. So this is the 2001 SBS. This is a bit beaten. This is a watch with amazing provenance. So this
one from that served in Afghanistan, right?
So this went to Afghanistan 5 times.
Amazing.
But the 2001s, there are 3 different varieties of caseback.
Yeah.
And because it was a big batch, and it was, when we know, it was delivered over a period of about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And there's, again, slight misconception on what a caseback number means. The caseback number is the contract year. It's not the delivered year. So all the watches that say 2001.
That makes sense then. That makes a lot of sense.
The contract was done in 2001, and they were delivered between 2001 and 2004.
Yeah, because we sold a one with provenance recently, a 2000. And the guy got issued it in 2003. So that actually makes complete sense.
So this is a beautiful one. This is a completely mint, totally unissued.
I mean, this is so cool. That's how they used to come, in those little boxes.
In the original storage box. But if you have a look at the stamped date and it's correct. That's the correct serial number for the watch.
So what's that stamped?
So 91. So the contract date here is 91.
Ah, but they didn't get it until the 28th of March, 1992.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's on a G10. So you imagine what these are like.
Yeah. The 2006 G10s were still being delivered in 2008.
Wow.
So that's another thing about understanding
Imagine
all
just
the markets.
opening a big cardboard box just full of these little cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
And they were just, there we go.
So and that's a storage box. They were actually delivered in these enormous boxes with just them all lined up. And I've got one, but it's absolutely knackered. In sort of lined up in little foam things, but then
Well, you mean like a pelly case type thing with like foam inserts?
Yeah. Well, and it was a cardboard pellet case.
Okay.
But and then they were kind of decanted into storage boxes. But I love getting those boxes like that. There's another.
Yeah.
Here's another one with its.
So this looks identical,
box.
but just.
And this is a stopwatch.
What year does that say?
And
79. Also delivered in the same year though. August 79.
Yeah. So sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But this is, and again, great provenance. This was issued to a meteorologist working with the RAF. And you can see MOD Air, and it's marked 6B.
That's so cool.
And he would use that stopwatch for timing cloud formations, for timing changes in weather patterns.
Lunch breaks.
Quite possibly. So because a lot of time you get a military watch and it comes out of surplus or it's been through multiple people's hands, you don't really know a great deal about it. So I love, I got this from the family of the guy who owned it, or guy who was issued it, and getting a little that.
And it's funny because actually we always say about box and papers with watches are relatively meaningless, but actually with these, it's a little bit of a different story because they do tell you something that you wouldn't know if you didn't have it.
Yeah, and particularly like this one, being able to spend a bunch of time talking to, Jason Lloyd, who had that watch, who served with that watch. I was fortunate enough to write up his story. But then, we've talked a lot about the wrist watches. I've also brought some stopwatches. Now, stopwatches don't get a lot of love.
No.
But CWC supplied maybe 40,000 mechanical stopwatches, and you can pick them up on eBay really easily. And a lot of them are, kind of...
So 40,000 in what period of time?
Between the early 70s and the early 90s, so over a period of about 20 years.
So when you met with Ray, how many clocks and watches was he making per annum on average? Because when you throw them in the mix, you're making those, you're making them, and you're making these. That's a considerable amount of hardware that you're making.
He will have, over the course of... So I collect from 1973 to 2008.
So it would only be those in 73, right?
73 were stopwatches and
the chronographs. Then the W10s.
Yeah, from 76.
Yeah, okay.
So over that period of time, he will have done 40,000 W10s, 60-odd thousand G10s, 40,000 stopwatches, a few thousand dive watches, a few hundred clocks.
Considering he started it because they couldn't be bothered. Hamilton couldn't be bothered to maintain the contracts.
Yeah.
And he just had the gumption to go, I'll carry it on. And then 20, 30 years later, he's produced 100,000 odd watches.
Yeah.
It's madness.
And the niches in these are really interesting. So this is one, again, I kept it in its storage. I don't know whether it was delivered in this box or stored in this box, but I've seen a number of them with these. So I know, they've been in these boxes for a while. This is a Royal Australian Navy.
Oh, wow.
Stopwatch. So, CWC have done several types of watches for the Royal Australian Navy. I think that's really interesting. They've for some reason, they've whited out the logo here and reprinted it above the central pinion. No idea why.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's in yards.
So this is an ASDIC. So this is an anti-submarine stopwatch. So
what would they have used that for then?
So it's calibrated for, I think, relative to the speed of sound in water. So they send out a radar ping, and they wait for it to come back. And so they press
clever.
They press the stopwatch when the ping goes out, and when it comes back, they stop the stopwatch.
That is amazing.
Because it's calibrated for half the speed of sound in water.
Yes.
It then you can read off how far away is the submarine.
Yeah, because this is...
So that's then you set your fuse on your torpedo.
Amazing.
Because you've got an approximate yardage.
Torpedo stopwatch.
So ASDIC anti-submarine, I can't remember the whole thing, but ASDIC is the anti-submarine committee.
I love that it only goes up to 6 seconds as well.
Yeah.
Goes up to essentially 5,000 yards.
Yeah, because after 5,000 yards,
they're probably not a threat, are they?
It's not that accurate.
No.
So
wow, that is really cool.
That's a really fun one.
Yeah, because that's complete. All the dials on these are all completely different as well.
So these two. So this is kind of I think one of the coolest stopwatches. It's a 3-second stopwatch. Hamilton also made these, so this is another one that carried on from Hamilton. But you can read this down to, so that's kind of 0.8
it's in
a second.
Sorry, I've just realised what you're talking about. So that's 1 second in point.
So that hand goes around. So I don't know what they.
Oh, and that's the milliseconds.
Yes. So you can time things in.
Wow.
Now there's slight false accuracy because the human reactions aren't
correct. Yeah.
so I think it's fun, but it's a 3-second stopwatch.
Wow, that is super cool.
This is another CWC, which
that'd be perfect for timing the average level of patience that a Londoner now has. Wouldn't it?
Yes, before you have to get out of their way on the tube.
Excuse me. Oh, that was 2.1 seconds.
Yep. So this again, it doesn't say CWC on the dial, it says CWC on the movement. So again, you have to know a little bit about these to even collect them. But this is a split-second stopwatch.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's one of the very few stopwatches. It's now going to tick away possibly quite loudly for the rest of the conversation. It's one of the few stopwatches that has a running sub-seconds.
The only time I've seen those used practically is actually in race cars.
Yeah.
On the dashes of race cars, always had split seconds.
Yeah.
Normally running seconds, and it's actually, if you want to do the modern Mila and some road races now, you have to have period correct stopwatches.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of them. Yeah.
And some of these, I don't even really know what the military will have used them for. So the ASDIC one, the torpedo one
what are the engravings for?
So it's probably 77.
Yeah. So just standard British military issued.
So they use them for obviously timing the difference between flashes and bangs to try and figure out where military artillery was. I've seen them used for mine laying, where you want your mine, the speed of your ship, you want your mines a certain distance apart, so you need to drop them every 15 seconds, 30 seconds. I've seen them used for elapsed time in flying. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of different.
So you've got split seconds, running seconds, and minutes.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. And then these two are these are not military. They're CWC. I love this one. The style on this from 1978. It's so unusual for all the.
It looks really old, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you see this occasionally because Ray will have just gone out into the market. He had a contract. And if there wasn't a tight spec, because these two are actually for the old DHSS, the Department of Health and Social Security, would have been used in hospitals,
right?
Amongst other things, or maybe for timing people collecting their benefits. So these watches are clearly made well before 1978. But he had an order in 1978 for a few thousand watches.
Yeah.
And he would have gone out into the market and he would have found these slightly old ones. He said, "Okay, I'll buy them. I'll stick CWC on the dial."
A bit big for nurses, wouldn't they?
But for timing other medical procedures.
Yeah.
So and there are clocks from CWC. There's so many.
It's crazy.
Absolutely fascinating little nooks and crannies of CWC collecting.
We have 2 hours to do this operation. Time starts now. Let's go. And just hangs it. Crazy. Awesome. I didn't realise they had such variety in their stopwatches. Now, there are 5 watches on this table that aren't CWC.
Yes.
Should we talk about these two? Because these look rather interesting.
So I love military watches, and actually I collected a broader range of military watches before I got into CWC. Then I fell in love, I got addicted to CWC.
So is this a pre CWC collecting day?
Well, so this is now post. So,
okay.
So I sold all my other military watches, in part to spend the money on CWCs. But now that my rate of acquisition on CWCs is slowing a little, because I'm down to, I've got a list of 12. If I buy a new watch now, my wife says, was it on the list?
Was it on the list?
So I've got a list of 12, and I've got 1 or 2 that's on the list that actually I have a reasonable hope of acquiring. So this one is actually a relatively recent one, and it's kind of, because my rate of acquisition on CWCs is slowing down, I'm kind of looking back out into that.
You've got the mental bandwidth to look at other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now this is actually this is a very rare, very early military issued Rolex. And you've got the book here, actually, the Nick Falk's Submariner book.
Yes.
One of the really interesting things about that, in that book, is he talks about the genesis, actually, of the Submariner itself. The entire Submariner itself came out of working with the Royal Navy for a dive watch. And he talks about that, and he's got some fascinating documents in that book about the 6150, which was actually the first watch issued to British military clearance divers. And of course, 6150 was the very first Explorer.
Yes.
Some Explorer collectors don't consider them an Explorer because they've got a little bit of a bubble back.
Yeah, they're slightly different, but
whether or not you think they're
the concept of it is there,
This is an HS10, Hydrographic Survey 10, 6150 from 1953. So this was the very first batch of the very first issued British military dive watches. Because of course, actually, they can go down a pretty decent depth.
Yeah, and also you need to remember, diving then was in the 50s. This is pre-Aqualung. This is pre, Jacques Cousteau getting involved. Diving then was a lot more primitive than it is even in the 70s. So that would have been ample for most divers with,
And so most people wouldn't consider that a dive watch, but you can dive with it, and the British military did.
Yeah.
And this is what's known as a Burford dial.
Yes.
So we're actually quite familiar with Burford dials on some of the later Submariners.
Submariners,
But in '53, these were issued with radium dials, and of course in the '60s, when people were beginning to understand the dangers of radium, the British military went through a lot of their old stocks. It happened with a lot of the Dirty Dozen watches as well. And they redialed them.
You redialed them
and
to
they rehanded them to
safely,
tritium. And so this is what it's what's called a Burford.
Incidentally, they did that. There's a misconception because we've just done a video on it. They did that not for the wearer, because wearing a radium watch doesn't really affect you much. It was actually more for the watchmakers.
Right. Yes.
Because they were the ones that were getting affected by it. You imagine that you had all these watches on the bench you had to service.
Yeah.
As soon as you take the glass off, radium is primarily an alpha emitter. You then get all this, all the alpha is in the air, and then it can be inhaled.
Yeah.
So it was actually more for the watchmakers to protect themselves, because after the radium girls were coming out with all these issues, these watchmakers I don't want to work on that if it's radium. So then they have to do something about it.
And at Hurstmansoe, they actually had these massive lead safes
for
storing radium watches. I was chatting to a guy recently who worked at Hurstmansoe in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And he was telling me loads of fascinating stuff about what they did and how they tested them. He talked a lot about how they tested the Rolexes when they came in, and we were talking specifically about when Ray took over when they closed down Hurstmansoe and Ray took over the contract, and he said the guy closing Hurstmansoe insisted that Ray take away these massive lead storage units for radium watches. And Ray didn't want anything to do with them, but he had to take them because he wanted a contract. So he basically picked them up from Hurstmansoe, took them straight to the dump. Because by then there were very few radium watches. But so this is a watch I love wearing. I love Explorers, although funny enough, this is the only one I own.
That's cool.
But I've always enjoyed the Explorer. I think it's a great little watch. I love the bubble back on this. And the heritage on this, and the fact it's a Burford dial. And going right back to the comment at the beginning, this is from 1953. It keeps as good time as
amazing.
Anything else in my
Amazing.
collection. So robustness, longevity, a watch that
I mean, it's survived 80 years
for lifetimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the other military one, I've actually owned this one quite a long time, and this is one that didn't get sold to pay for CWCs, and I'm glad I didn't, because this is a W10 67 Omega Seamaster 300.
Yeah.
And just in beautiful original
fantastic
condition.
that is.
And really importantly, the original dial. Now the Seamasters, not many people, I think some collectors know this, but a lot of people don't. The Seamasters, they're like any other military watch. They go in, they'd be serviced, and if the wrong dial went back in, then it doesn't really matter. The early ones, the 67s, have that sort of small triangle with the 12.
It's really crazy. We I was just looking at the serial number. We sold one earlier on this year. It was 267, and yours is 283.
Right.
From the same year, yeah.
So Philips recently sold 284. So the next number up.
Wow.
So this, actually, I say recently, is maybe the trouble with collecting for a long time is you say recently and you realise it was like 5 years ago or something. But, they sold 284 and it had an incorrect dial. So it actually had the big triangle.
Yes, which comes later,
which is a sort of a 68, 69.
Yeah.
I actually, if it hadn't, I can't afford to buy things at Philips, or maybe I'm just too mean to buy things at Philips. I really wanted to buy that watch because I would have loved to have had, I've always wanted a big triangle dial one as well.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have had the next, even though it's an incorrect dial for the watch, I would love to have the next serial number. Right?
I do have one from its original owner with a big triangle, with a T dial from 68.
Well,
so
maybe we'll talk about that afterwards.
When we're ready, I'll get to come look at it. But that's a fantastic example. And also, what we don't realise is the A on the back of the case means it's gone back to Omega during its service and had the
screw down crown
the
Naya
changed,
crown.
which is lovely.
Yeah.
That is a lovely watch. I'm glad you kept that.
So there are 5 we were going to talk about that weren't CWCs. Those 2, I think, it's pretty obvious to see how they fit in the military watches.
Absolutely, yeah.
There is another, actually quite big part of my collection, which is modern British dress watches. And in fact, they're probably more what I wear day to day. I work in the city. I don't generally turn up to see clients in a
actually,
watch.
If people follow your personal page, not the CWC page, you do post a lot about them. Actually,
yes, yeah. They never get as many likes. I mean, that's the algorithm.
It's just how it is. I think people there's such, you're known for these, and there's such variety here, and they are for most people so hard to find. But these in the flesh are,
and this is something I'm also really passionate about. So I'll start with the Fears Brunswick. Now I think so. I know Nick Fears. I think he's just done an absolutely sensational job at relaunching his family watch company. And the Brunswick, for me, it is a British modern design classic. I own several Brunswicks.
Okay.
They're such great watches. They're a lovely wearer. I always say, actually, to Nick, they're a great travel watch and a great client watch. But I can be, out in the city anywhere. I can wear a Fears Brunswick. I feel really good because I know it's a lovely watch.
Yeah.
But it's not going to attract the attention of a Rolex sub or kind of something fancy. So I also feel safe. This is the version that he did a couple of years back for the British Watchmakers' Day.
Okay.
So the dial is based on the original, I think it was a 1920s or 1930s watch that inspired the Brunswick. It's a silver case,
cool.
which is nice. It's got
fully silver.
Fully silver.
Oh, nice.
And it's just a really lovely smart watch.
Crown is beautiful, isn't it?
And as I say, the Brunswick, I think I've got 4 Brunswicks in various different types.
2 of 10. Wow.
Yeah, and I turned up at the British Watchmakers' Day. I didn't
barged your way through.
Actually, I didn't intend to buy it, and I wore another white dial Brunswick that I had to remind myself that
knew what you were doing.
That I didn't need this watch. But I got to the stand and I was chatting to the guys, and I said, it's such a beautiful watch, and they said, we've got 1 left from the 5 we're going to sell in the morning. And I said, okay, it's mine.
Yeah.
I could not resist. But
it is a well proportioned watch, actually.
Yeah. So I love that, and I wear Brunswicks, and I wear that watch a lot.
It's like, the nice thing about the silver is it's got that little bit of extra weight to it.
Yes.
That it would do if it was steel.
Yeah, and it's got a closed case back, which I really like. You know, I love a good solid closed case back.
Nice.
So
how do you actually remove? How do they remove it? Is it like a split stem?
I have no idea. I don't touch my watches. I'm really cack-handed. I'm not a manual.
Must come out like the old
person.
Amigas.
So yeah.
Comes out from the front.
I let watchmakers do all of that stuff for me.
I love that. That's a very pretty watch.
So that's one of them. Then another one I brought, and I've got a lot of modern British dress watches, so I only brought 3. So this is the Denison Collectability Limited Edition. Now Denison, if anyone knows the brand, it used to be a really good old British watch case making brand.
Based in Birmingham, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And made cases for Rolex, for a whole bunch. You can find early Rolex, early Omega.
Yeah, I think
in Denison cases.
I think it was because they, back in the 30s to 50s, I think there was issues with customs, wasn't there?
Yes.
Importing
and so
stuff from Switzerland, especially anything that was precious metal.
Yeah.
So I think it was cheaper for them to get it made, the cases made in the UK, and then they used to ship the watch parts over individually, didn't they? And then build them.
Which, if Trump tariffs continue, we might see the same thing happening in the US. But so Toby Sutton revived the brand a little while ago. He produced
Watch of Night for Toby Sutton, yeah.
He produced some really nice field watches, and I think he did a couple of variations, and then didn't really do much else with it. And then I think a year or two ago, he teamed up with a Swiss entrepreneur, and they went in a completely different direction, which is these really elegant, really thin, kind of beautiful, sort of almost cocktail watches.
Yeah, because they do like stone dials now as well, don't
they?
Well,
so I saw them when they launched, and I loved them. They've got a beautiful tiger eye dial, and I loved them, but there were none that kind of quite spoke to me, and I thought I would wear that watch. But I thought they're going to do one sooner or later. And then they came out with a collaboration with John Reardon at Collectability, because he saw it and thought this has echoes of the Ellipse, which is one of his favourite watches. And then there's other design elements that he brought in from other 70s Pateks. I just saw a picture of it and I saw, yes, I'm having that. It's just a gorgeous watch.
From memory, they're really affordable, aren't they?
500 quid?
Yeah. Like, almost like a no-brainer figure kind of thing.
Yes.
Like if you've had one Peroni or a small glass of wine, it's then like, oh, it's just fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't drink, so I didn't.
Oh, there we go.
I didn't even need a drink to press go.
You just had some Wrigley's chewing gum and you were sold.
So that I love that. I wear it a lot. It's one of the few watches that I put on my wrist, and my wife, first time I wear it, my wife looked and said, "That's nice." In general, she ignores my watches.
Bless her. She's probably used to seeing you wear these. You're probably at dinner somewhere, lovely. She's all dressed up. You're all dressed up, and you're wearing an old 70s NATO, all scuff it, and that's what she's probably used to seeing. So when you put that on,
it's
probably refreshing for her. Yeah.
So that's 2 of them, and then this third one. This is an incredibly.
This is absolutely fantastic. This is actually the first. This is the first one I've seen in the flesh.
And that's probably because there may only be 3 or 4 of these actually in the wild.
Oh, really?
So this is a Struthers Project 248. Now, Craig and Rebecca Struthers, 2 of the loveliest people in British watchmaking.
Are they brother and sister, or are they husband and wife?
Husband and wife.
Right.
And this is a watch that they've been working on for, I think, 7 years now. It is entirely handmade by the 2 of them.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Every single part of the watch and the case is handmade by the 2 of them.
Not using CNC?
Not using CNC.
So we were talking about this before we went on air, is that, I compared it to like a Roger Smith, and actually Roger Smith use CNC machines now.
Yeah.
And so these guys don't.
His first, and look, to be clear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with CNC, and in fact,
no, there isn't.
As the Struthers evolve their watchmaking, they'll be using more.
But as you know, to not use them and do everything from scratch, is a lot of effort.
And that's why it's taken 7 years to produce 5 watches.
Yeah, wow. And you've got one of them.
And I know them really well. They're amazing watchmakers. They're amazing people. This is an incredible watch. and it's it's got so much of their love of watches in it as well. So you kind of look at turn it over. That it's modelled on an old English pocket watch. It's got their background is restoring historical watches. So it's got stuff it's got an English lever. No one's used an English lever escapement in hundreds of years.
Wow.
They're all Swiss lever because it was just a different setup.
Yeah.
So they've managed to they brought an English lever back to life. It's got a Breguet parachute shock setting, genuine working Breguet parachute shock setting. It's got a rocking pin keyless works.
Wow.
So like you had in the old pocket watches. It's just a beautiful, beautiful.
And it's white gold, is it?
It's white gold. And then, they also...
dial though is...
The dial made
hopefully we capture it on the video well, but the dial is absolutely gorgeous.
So the dial is
really deep
enamel and actually
black.
made by Anodyne.
Oh, is it?
So this is the other thing, is they also, the movement is entirely made by hand by them, but they work with other incredible craftspeople. So the dial is made by Anodyne, made by one enameller at Anodyne.
Wow.
Who took probably a year to develop them and develop the technique. The engraving is a Florian, who's a German gun engraver who does.
Oh wow, amazing!
The numbers and the dial actually designed by Lee, by 1 Hour Watch, his knowledge of what makes a watch dial work is incredible.
It is it's truly fascinating. Not expecting you to tell me exactly what you paid for it, but what do these sort of what is their entry level watch? What is their high end watch? Do they just make stuff to order? How does it work?
So that's a 6-figure watch.
Is it okay? I mean, when you hold it and you feel it, it does feel like a 6-figure watch. That's why I was kind of, scared around the issue because it does. When I saw it initially, I was like, wow, that is a proper bit of kit.
But and what the Struthers are doing is actually they're moving. They've made a whole bunch of different things in the past. Have been making the Kingsley watch, which is a beautiful watch, which I've also owned. But they're actually moving to only produce the 248.
Okay.
So unlike other, very high-end watchmakers, you can actually order one of those and have a reasonable chance of seeing it delivered in the next few years.
Okay. I was saying,
that's the ad break.
Is the process like Roger, where you would put your name down of interest, or is it like you can go, I would like one of these, here's a deposit, I'll see it in 3 years' time?
I would just say email Craig and Rebecca.
Yeah.
They are.
I'd love to interview them actually, because that is seeing it in the flesh. That is a super, super impressive watch.
It's a beautiful watch.
It really is.
I would say. So I've talked about my favourite CWC. And apologies to Rich and Mal at CWC, but if I had to pick my favourite watch in my entire collection, it would be that.
Yeah, that's another level. That is high-end watchmaking right there.
It is. And so look, I'm going to end on the watch I'm wearing. And it kind of fits with that, because this is, if I had to go for a 2-watch collection.
Okay. Oh, wow.
It would be that.
Okay.
Obviously.
And not the 1986 CWC?
Well, the nice thing
or
about...
would you try and step out in your pocket and it would be a 2.5 watch collection?
The nice thing about having the 2-watch collection conversation is entirely theoretical. No one is ever going to force me to go...
Because prior to us going live, I asked him if he had any CWCs for sale, of which he has many duplicates, and of which he said the words, at the moment I struggle to part with any, and I just found that hilarious.
I don't like selling. I don't like selling watches. But I only have 300.
Only have 300.
So there's still. I've got loads of.
You need
loads
another
of room
60.
In the safe.
You need another 65 or 66, so you can have one each day.
Yeah.
There we go. That's a new. That's a new proposition that you can propose to your wife now.
And she'll be very happy with that.
Yeah.
So if I was going with a 2-watch collection, it would be the Struthers Project 248, and it would be this, which is
your
a
Submariner date.
2020 Submariner date. Now, there is absolutely nothing special about that watch whatsoever. I mean, a Rolex sub is always a kind of a special watch, but it's a bog standard. kind of modern 20. I think I bought it early 2021 because it's the model they brought out in 2020. It's a Rolex Submariner. There are hundreds, thousands of them, but I get so much pleasure from wearing that. And look, it's like most Rolex collectors. There's the kind of most watch collectors I think go through. You start thinking Rolex is amazing, and then you realise there are so many other things, and quite sometimes you can have a bit of a downer on Rolex as you go through your collecting journey. And then as you kind of mature, you realise Rolex make the most incredible watches. Have done historically.
Yeah.
But as a daily wearer, you just can't beat a good sub.
I think the fairest way to put it with Rolex, and to give them as much credit as possible, because we don't sell modern watches here, but the principle of Rolex is still the same as it was in 1953, and it is testament to them. We had Matthew Taylor's watchmaker Alex was in here recently, and he's a very precocious young man, extremely talented watchmaker. And I asked him a simple question. I said, of all the watches that you work on, and he works on everything from Omega to Lemania and everything in between, I said, in your opinion, what are the best watch movements that you have worked on? And with zero hesitation, he says, Rolex movements. And I said, oh, really? I said, why is that? He said, because he was like, they are built with a watchmaker in mind, and they are built with reliability in mind. And they put a lot of them, you can see they put most of the money goes on the design and the build quality of the movement. And I think that's why Rolex still do so well, is because, yes, it's boring, but it's a bit like a Toyota Hilux, right? It's not going to set the world alight with its looks, but what car are you choosing to cross the desert? It's probably going to be that.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get to the other side reasonably intact. And it's why you can't beat Rolex. And they have some like 1% or like 0.1% return rate on new watches, which is like significantly lower than most other brands. Yeah. And you don't have to worry about it. You put it on, you don't have to think about it. You paid your money, you get the reliability, and you're paying for something that other brands just don't quite get there. You're not paying for high-end watchmaking. And I think another reason why Rolex is still so successful is because they don't throw so many options at you. And you go onto Rolex's website today and you want to buy a Submariner date, you can only buy 8 versions of the same watch. Whether it's a date or no date, only 8 in total.
Yep.
You go onto Omega's website and you want to buy a Seamaster, 67 different variants of that watch. And therein lies the issue, is that they keep their models streamlined, and whether you've got a 60s Submariner or a 2020 Submariner, when we get them serviced, they run like clockwork, and they work, and they just work and work and work. And I think that has something to be said. You don't have to think when you put that watch on.
And so, again, I come right back to that, initial beginning of this conversation. What do I love about watches? What do I look for in watches?
Yeah.
I want, I love tool watches, though I do love dress watches, but I want something that, I can rely on, something that feels like it will last me a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so, and that's why, that's why I love the Struthers. This is a beautifully made, incredibly well made watch. This will last me the rest of my life and will run beautifully for that time. And I guess that's hopefully that all of these all the watches on the table today sort of show that. They show purpose. There's something special about them, but there's also something really durable about all of them.
Yeah. My one final question to you before I leave you be is, where do you go from here? You spent the last decade tirelessly building up, almost an archive level of information about all CWCs, and it sounds like you're nearing the end of that now. Once you've got to where you feel like you're comfortable with what you've done, what do you do then?
So there are still a few more stories to tell.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting quartz watch with a date that CWC did for the RAF around about 2000, called the GS 2000. That story has not really been told yet. So there's a few more areas still to talk about. Then I think there's a book.
Yeah.
I love my website, and I know a lot of people really enjoy the website.
I think it would be fantastic. I mean, you have the MM books, and I think it would be fantastic to do a...
But there's nothing quite like a book.
No,
and websites aren't forever. So I think bringing all of that together, publishing a book, I think that's something that I definitely would like to do.
And remember, when you buy a book, you own it.
Yeah.
You don't own a website.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's nice to have something physical, and I hope we can help with getting some higher end level photography of the watches and document them properly, so that it'll be there.
That would be great. Lovely.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for sharing your wonderful collection with us, and taking the time out of your summer holidays. We really appreciate it, and I hope the viewers at home find it as fascinating as I have. And best of luck with the most wanted list.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.